Welcome back, everybody. Today, we are joined by two forces from the Bluegrass Trust for Historic Preservation, Dr. Zach Leonard, a historian and preservationist who oversees advocacy and National Register services, and Erica Friis, a preservationist and educator who leads visitor experience and is launching the new Preservation Center at Hopemont. Together, they bridge the gap between deep history and public engagement. Erica, Zach, how are you guys doing today?
Doing great. Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Looking forward to a great conversation. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to lead off here with a couple of fun icebreakers just to get us all warmed up. You both, either or, can answer however you guys like. You hear one that interests you, however you want to do it. Would you prefer, I'm going to start with this one, prefer to never have to fold clothes again or clean up dishes? If you had to pick one.
I would say I would love to never fold clothes because I feel like dishes are kind of quick.
Yeah.
But folding clothes, it's like, it takes forever. Zach?
I think I get more personal satisfaction from ironing out wrinkles than extracting dishes from the dishwasher.
Man, I hadn't even gotten to ironing yet, so you're already a whole nother layer in there. Okay, very good, very good. Ironing is a lost art. Very few people know how to do that well. So kudos to you, Zach.
Thank you so much.
That's great. Favorite lunchbox snack as a kid, and whatever that is it true today? Like, do you still like that snack quite a bit, or is that just a kid era?
Oh my gosh. I bet that Zach and I have really different answers because I grew up in Oklahoma. And Zach grew up in New England. So I feel like this is going to be like
pretty different.
Clam bake or something. My favorite, I really liked those like the string cheese.
Okay. Sure.
And yeah, of course I still eat those. And then I would also never say no to like Gushers.
Yep. That's fair.
Yeah. Which they are still making to this day, which I think is a really great thing.
What about you, Zach?
I would bring yogurt to school almost every day, and it would be fruit at the bottom yogurt.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have all the fancy kinds that are available today. Yep. But because I'm such a fan of delayed gratification, I wouldn't stir it together. I would just leave all the fruit at the bottom.
Wow. Okay. You just like wait, get it all at once at the end.
That's very great. You. That's very you.
That's great. All right. Last thing. Most unexpectedly useful thing that you own under $50.
What I didn't find out because we just had this ice storm. I do not have any ice removal, anything. And I didn't have one in my car when that hit really hard. So that's under 50.
So if you had it, that would have been the most useful.
If I had it, that would have been wildly useful. Yeah.
I know the answer. The answer is apple cider vinegar. If you have light scratches in your floor, you do half apple cider vinegar, half olive oil, mix it together, rub it into the scratches.
This is a little known secret.
Also, I believe that apple cider vinegar can be used as an antiseptic, which is why I put it on all the wounds that I sustained.
Yes, all your many battle wounds.
Do you sustain a lot of wounds?
Frequently. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. Well, very good. Great way to break into this. I just want to start off because we're going to get into the Bluegrass Trust and kind of what you guys are doing today. Tell me a little bit, though, getting here. Again, either of you, both of you can share maybe what would have been your spark moment, your like aha moment. Whether I don't know if in historic preservation there's like a particular building that you might have come across or an experience or whatever it was at some point in your life where you said, "Hey, this is what I'm excited about. I'm really jacked about historic preservation because of this thing that happened." What was that for either of you?
For me, it was, I mentioned earlier, I grew up in Oklahoma, which is a younger state, and architecturally speaking, my hometown was like founded in the 1920s, 30s. So I grew up kind of feeling very like starved for this strong desire to be around more historic structures and to like really lean into what the histories were and what that meant to the community. And so when my parents moved to Lexington in like 2010, and every time I visited, I just like absolutely loved it. And I felt like I came here and it was like everything that I ever wanted in a hometown because of that. Like particular places that I really love, I absolutely love 3rd Street in general, both the east and the west sides of it, but especially between Broadway and Jefferson on 3rd Street. I just think it's a really beautiful collection of some Victorian houses in Lexington. But I mean, I could go on and on and on. I think Lexington has an incredible array of historic gems that always get me very excited. But Zach, what about you?
My answer would be twofold. To begin, I am from the original Lexington, and we have no shortage of historic 18th century buildings there. I think what piqued my interest as a youth and continues to, especially when I'm back home there, is actually the traces of the buildings that no longer survive. So a whole bunch of Massachusetts that formerly served as farmland has been reforested, and much of it is protected for nature purposes, but you will still frequently come across the ruins of houses and barns and root cellars. And I have an encyclopedic knowledge of all of the foundations west of I-95.
Very
so
nice.
That's what kind of piqued my curiosity as a child. But then as I grew up in Lexington, what we started to see was overdevelopment. This was in the late 90s, early 2000s, the subdividing of land that shouldn't have been cut up, demolition of whole neighborhoods to put up McMansions. And I just recall being troubled by that and wondering why there were not better regulatory mechanisms in place to prevent that.
Yeah. That's great. That helps kind of get us grounded here so people understand kind of what your individual aspirations were getting started here. Erica, I'm curious with you having a master's in education, right? And you said you came from Oklahoma. Tell me a little bit about how that informs your approach to public engagement now that you're here in Lexington and doing historic preservation. What was kind of the crossover from your academic background into what you're doing now with the Bluegrass Trust?
I grew up, I got an English degree as my undergrad because I just love to read. And then that led very quickly to me becoming an English teacher, which then led to Tates Creek Middle School, actually here in Lexington was my first job. As soon as I'd moved here, I worked at Tates Creek for 12 years. In the last 7 of those years, a position became open that was in what they called industrial arts. It was wood shop. So I helped turn that into a maker space. And so it was really great opportunity to be very artistic and hands-on. And from there, I just found that at the same time I was starting my own podcast called the Lexington Podcast, which was just like a passion project. My brother and I were covering like true crime and local history that we just found really interesting. And it just sparked something in me, especially post-COVID, when I knew that I still love to teach, but I didn't necessarily want to do that in like a K through 12 environment anymore. And so it's kind of just chased down a dream of wanting to look more into historic preservation. I felt really lucky that of all the universities in the area or in like even the surrounding states, UK has a historic preservation department. And so the more I looked into it, the more interested I was. And I thought, like, how can I really meld those loves of like creating and making and historic preservation and really like Lexington history itself, as well as education. And then it was like serendipitous that this position became available at the Bluegrass Trust just recently, which is a very like forward facing position. So it's a lot of educating the public, ensuring that everything from we're doing educational things for K through 12. We're working on a lot of like curriculum and things like that, but also just for your average everyday person that's interested in preservation, how to become more involved on the advocacy side, or maybe has a historic house or property that they're needing help with. And that's a really great thing about the Bluegrass Trust is that we really offer such a wide variety of those services for anyone that's very interested in preservation at like every level. So it was great. It was a really nice way to like meld a lot of skills together that were specific, but still things that I was incredibly passionate about.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Zach, I was interested because you have quite a background, at least academically, a PhD in South Asian history. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. And then preservation planning, Cornell. Now you're here doing this in Lexington. So your background, would you consider the kind of a lot of your academic background focusing on like empire, colonialism, that type of thing? What does that look for you from that perspective of having that kind of study in your past and what you're doing now with historic preservation here in Lexington? How do those blend for you?
In some ways, they can overlap. I'll give one example. In the book that I wrote on anti-colonial networks stretching between Boston and Britain and India, first two chapters of that focused on these trans-regional abolitionist networks and often how American abolitionists would go to Britain, sometimes go to India, be impacted by the kinds of enslavement they witnessed out there and bring those ideas home. So when I moved to Lexington, I actually was still working on finessing my master's thesis that I had done at Cornell, which was a comprehensive survey of underground railroad sites in upstate New York, looking at forms of designation and commemoration, identification. And obviously, those abolitionist figures that I had studied previously were enmeshed in those same groups and networks as were present in upstate New York. Come to Lexington. Well, I tried to tap into that knowledge and expand it here, get involved with the Lexington Freedom Train group. They were responsible for the monument to Lewis Hayden that was just put up on Limestone and 4th. So I delivered a lecture for them looking at designation processes in New York versus Kentucky, and the whole thing just kind of harmonized. So occasionally you can find that through line through all the random things I've done in the past.
Very nice. That's awesome. Erica, with your work in creating, educational content that makes preservation like an accessible concept people can understand, do you think there's a good, either a story or maybe even a building in Lexington that really illustrates why preservation matters? And how have you gone about telling that story specifically? If there's like an example you can give.
Oh my gosh, it's such a good question. We're just now putting together the educational resources and curriculum, and it's been really fun because in my background, I taught middle school, and so I'm very aware of like what would be, maybe in elementary schools, but I didn't actually teach elementary, and of course I know that what might be in high school. So it's been fun to think about like preservation concepts, everything from like economics and environmental impacts and things like that, and where that would live at those different levels. But I think there's so many great opportunities to talk about. I think the one that really sticks out to me is Palmer's Pharmacy. And I know Dr. Leonard was actually around, very instrumental in helping the Bluegrass Trust with that. Do you want to talk about Palmer's?
I wouldn't say I was instrumental. I started at the tail end of that multi-year campaign. Yes, so this is a building in the East End, operated as a pharmacy for the African American community there. I would say try to get my dates right here, in the late, maybe 2017, 2018, we became involved as an organization. There had been a kind of Catholic welfare organization based there, but the future of the building was very much in question. So we helped fundraise for that project. We got a grant from the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and it has recently, within the past 2 years, been repurposed by the United Way as a waypoint center. So the point of that is to offer services to the community, all kinds of social welfare, tax assistance, instrumental things like that.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, it's a great example of how the community can really, it's not just the Bluegrass Trust with our like millions and millions of dollars, which of course we don't have. It's a community that really rallies together and has to pull from so many different facets of not only government, but different, facets within the community and grassroots efforts, et cetera, to be able to make something like that happen.
Yeah. Now, talk a little bit about maybe I guess you could say is like a more technical piece. Zach, you're doing a lot of stuff with like National Register nominations, historic, tax credit, consulting, stuff like that. Explain to somebody who is, hearing for this first time, why those types of more technical pieces are really critical for actually saving buildings. And maybe an example of that where, you have to kind of bring in some of that to help illustrate why it's important to a community and how they can, leverage that.
Sure. I would say in two ways. So it might be surprising for some people to hear that much of Lexington actually has not been surveyed comprehensively in terms of its historic resources. The last surveys of any size that took place occurred around 1980. So there's still huge swaths of the city and the county where work just simply hasn't been done. So the catalyst for those broader surveys is often National Register work, because you need to establish the context in which a certain building was constructed. Now that's the social context, but also the physical context. So very often you see National Register nominations, both of individual properties, but districts in particular, laying the foundation for protective programs such as H1 historic districts to come into play. So there's a high likelihood, that if a district is on the National Register and its significance has been fully expressed, that it may become a protected H1 district, and that's something that the city regulates. So that's answer one. Answer two, in order to qualify for the state and federal historic tax credits, your building needs to be on the National Register. So that is financially often an influential reason for why people try to get nominated.
Yeah.
And those state and federal credits can be quite hefty. And in many cases, they will make or break a project, depending on if the developer is able to access them.
So then that's, I guess, kind of looking at that in both ways. You could sort of see a nomination maybe more than just simply like a bureaucratic form, something as a tool for actually engendering some community empowerment. And like you talk about grassroots, right, Erica? Like that, sort of blending both of those together. So you're kind of bringing the awareness, but also giving a way for the community to get involved and feel like, yeah, this is our project, right? It's not simply a government stamp of, don't touch this.
Yeah. And in my experience, when people may purchase a property without knowing it's on the National Register or without knowing anything about it, and those are the cases where they are most want to pursue demolition. Once you provide them with education and context, that is often sufficient to change their minds and kind of gear them more towards adaptive reuse as a possible solution. So it really all boils down to education, and that's how I see my role writing National Register nominations, is essentially drafting an academic article or something akin to that in terms of the argumentation, how it's referenced. I want these to be enduring documents that don't just check a bureaucratic box, but can serve a greater educational purpose.
Do you think that, I feel like I hear about a number of issues with Lexington as sort of a unique case study because we're kind of boxed in and like there's continual development. And I hear that a lot, and I'm sure it's true. I know it's true. I'm curious how unique it is to Lexington, because I feel like probably every region has their own set of challenging issues, whether it's preservation or just any degree of development. Do you guys think that we have a particularly unique problem here in Lexington as opposed to like other regions that have issues in terms of the historical preservation, or is it really just kind of par for the course? What is your take on that as like a locality here in specific?
Our unique position with the urban service boundary that Lexington has makes it fairly unique in terms of grow outwardly into farmland.
Yeah.
We're unique in the sense that we have, we're not unique for having agricultural resources, of course, but we're certainly unique in how and what those agricultural resources are, how and what they're being used for, if that truly does give back to the people of Lexington proper. Everything from, like actual crops to horse farms. And so there's like a wide variety of what's outside the urban service boundary. I personally find it really fascinating to watch how and in what ways city council and other Lexingtonians feel about expanding. As we all know that affordable housing is at an all-time, high in terms of need. How development can take over in certain aspects, but I'm sure Zach can really talk more about like Lexington compared to other towns. I'm pretty Lexington focused, but I think the USB, the urban service boundary, definitely presents very unique challenges for us.
Sure.
Yeah. So to begin with the difference, Lexington did suffer some of the ramifications of urban renewal in 1969, 1970 specifically, when the 3 and 4 blocks of the High Street corridor of historic homes was demolished. However, unlike many other cities, specifically those in the Northeast, Lexington did not get bifurcated by huge highway systems.
Yeah.
So we managed to avoid that, thankfully. And in some ways, I feel like we as a city have less of an excuse then, right? Because for those urban renewal projects, sometimes they were foisted upon the cities by the federal government. It's very complicated. But if we adaptive reuse in some situations earlier on, as opposed to just leveling entire blocks for surface parking, it would be an even more magical place than it is now. Yeah. So I think, in the 70s, kind of shot ourselves in the feet on a couple of times.
So you're almost kind of working backwards from a rough point there to some degree. Yeah.
I would say what is not unique to Lexington is what we're seeing with the surge in privately managed student dormitories springing up around campus. Many other cities where colleges are located and kind of sutured to the urban fabric are experiencing those difficulties as well, because colleges and universities across the board just don't want to manage dorms anymore. So that's much more of a macro issue.
And I don't think enough people realize that. Like the recent things that had happened with Islesford and Maxwell, things that are happening on Maxwell Street or the hub that was, that's, what is that, like on Mill? Is that a lot of people are quick to be like, oh, UK wants this, UK is building this. No, these are private developers that are coming in, and UK, wasn't officially a part of any of the council hearings on that. Like it has everything to do with them, but they're not a part of the conversation necessarily, even though obviously they are. So it's a very interesting relationship and balance with all of it.
Yeah, so it's a benefit to UK to not to have to manage these anymore, but that is their market servicing their students. Interesting,
most certainly. And very interesting. I think despicable, and I'll just say that, is that you have certain developers who come into hearings and claim that these dormitories are their own version of affordable housing. When what they're proposing is not affordable. Even as certain young council members had said, I would never be able to have afforded that when I was a UK student. So it's hairy,
Yeah, that's dicey stuff. So part of what intrigues me personally about what you guys do, I'm curious to kind of know, we've talked a little bit about it, but I would consider myself a pretty small government-minded individual. I don't like a lot of government interference. I'm a huge traditionalist, though, on one side. So you have this kind of fun little thing going on where I don't really want a lot of government involvement, but I also really appreciate what has been in place. And I really get saddened by people just coming in and just mass huge developments like, oh, let's throw this together. Two things kind of are at conflict for me personally when I see this happen. So I'm curious how you guys, and you individually and then like more broadly with Bluegrass Trust, sort of reframe the conversation that might be, I guess, people that would talk about preservation being maybe in the way. Maybe you've heard that or some version of that, where it's like you guys are just kind of the roadblock to getting stuff done. How do you balance those two things? How are you educating people in a way that they can understand, look, we're not here just to throw a wrench in the works. This is important to the community. It's important from a kind of sustainability aspect. How do you walk through some of that?
Zach, go for it.
I would say that preservation, if done right, ensures the social and economic diversity that is vital for every city. Taking the example of the student dorms that are all basically ripping off the same model, same elevated price point, that can be absolutely fatal for neighborhoods that once had a variety of uses. Single-use residential for a single type of student, all your economic and social diversity is eradicated. And not all old buildings need to be spruced up to be serving their highest and best uses. Older buildings, the owners can charge less in rent. They're not paying back the capital invested in new construction. And those older buildings can house a variety of creative endeavors. They can be catalysts for all kinds of enterprises that aren't, just computing in banks. So I think having that diversity within our built environment would be really crucial to ensuring Lexington's long-term progress.
Absolutely. I would definitely piggyback that. Economically speaking, as Zach had mentioned too, like preservation is more sustainable than demolition. It's the new construction because, it creates jobs in restoration trades. It boosts property values. It's a huge economic driver of tourism, especially the character of neighborhoods. And then, environmentally, we have so many great examples in Lexington of how adaptive reuse can really be put in creative ways where like everybody wins, right? So of existing structures and reducing waste and carbon, these are a lot of the things that we talk about in preservation. But really, beyond the sustainability and the environmental impacts, it really fosters a sense of place, especially with like how rapidly changing our world already. It's a way that we're able to see the past, learn from the past, but still, move forward in creative ways and in how and in which ways that we want to be able to do that.
Good. So if you guys were like looking ahead, let's say 10 years from right now, what would you like to see change in maybe the public's understanding of what historic preservation is, what it does? Like what would be a best case scenario if we were 10 years ahead?
Good question.
I would say, focusing on Lexington, it would be fantastic to see more of a city involvement in identifying vacant and underutilized properties as sites for infill, because believe it or not, we do love infill. We just don't love it when it entails the demolition of an entire historic neighborhood. But there are plenty of opportunities in downtown Lexington for this kind of growth. They might not be 5 feet away from the UK campus, but the opportunities are still there.
Good. That's good. All right, wrapping up here, I've got some rapid fire questions. Just again, either both of you just respond. Tell me what you think your favorite overlooked historic spot is in Lexington.
Overlooked.
Might be tricky to.
I'm gonna.
Tricky.
What's that?
Say that again, Eric.
Sorry, I don't. It's always just based on like whatever my personal historic research interests are lately. Zach, I already talk his ear off about this all the time, but I'm a huge fan of the bar complex in downtown Lexington. It's a wildly important spot for queer history of not just like the state of Kentucky, but the United States as a whole. And then lately, I've been into Turfland Mall, which is over there on Harrodsburg, and it was like the first, and in Southland Drive.
Yeah.
Like, I really love sort of like that mid-century, like the concept of shopping in a mall, and it was an experience. And I think both of those, while they get their own kind of attention, there hasn't been like enough done about those and how important they were to like the economy and like the social environment of Lexington in the mid 20th century. But yeah, that's just because I'm silly and I like to shop.
That's great.
I'm going to be self-serving and spotlight the Louis Gart Malthouse, which was my first National Register nomination that I did here. Nice. This is now where it houses the Creative Reuse Center. This is on Limestone between Loudon and 7th. There's also a fantastic event space upstairs with artist studios. It's a just awesome multi-use space. And if you want to learn more about the extensive history of that majestic building, the nomination is on our website and you can download it.
Let's
go.
Consulting
Services page.
You can also just Wikipedia any National Register nomination. I don't think enough people know, like, it is so quick. If you're interested in a certain property, just plugging it into Google, and then, in 3 or 4 clicks, you could read everything you wanted to, if it's on the register. So, yeah.
It's awesome. Do either of you have a particular preservation hero? It could be local or even national. Somebody that, when you think of somebody who's done it well in the past, maybe up to the modern.
Well, Zach is my preservation hero. I'll tell you.
There it is.
No, he is. I mean, like, I go to him for everything. Great. He's like,
that's awesome.
Has an encyclopedic knowledge of everything. And I just really respect his opinion. And it's like, it's one thing to like read, I just came out of preservation school at UK, and I love my professors. It's a great program. I'd recommend it to anyone. But it's always nice to have like somebody, that you're working with, or somebody that, it's not like a professor-student relationship. It's like a working relationship where you can like bounce ideas off of each other. And so I learn a lot from you, Zach. Yeah, I really do.
That's awesome.
Take me out dancing to Bar Complex sometime then, huh?
I will. And then we can go shopping at Turfland Mall. It's not there.
I think my answer is slightly more academic. I have been reading a lot of Jane Jacobs lately. But also, I think there are past leaders in Lexington who did a lot for preservation several decades ago and kind of demand recognition. One of those being, I think Pan Miller was a huge force in preservation, former mayor, council member. So there is a rich tradition within our local political sector of being involved in preservation initiatives, and we just need to be sure to keep that going.
Yeah. So wrapping up with that then, for listeners who are tuning in and are wanting to kind of take the next step, what would you guys recommend as like a concrete action they could take anytime right now to support historic preservation, either in their own neighborhood or Lexington more broadly? What would you tell them this is what you should do?
Well, I mean, not to plug our organization, but that's what we're here for. If you have some sort of in just sheer curiosity and interest in preservation, that's what we're here for. If you like the Maxwell and Alsford neighborhoods are very concerned that developers are going to come in and change zoning, then that's what we're here for too. We helped out tremendously with the advocacy side of that, going to council hearings and supporting the grassroots efforts of those neighborhood organizations. And then also, if you're just, wanting more educational resources, we have what we call detours. So once a month, we have our either a virtual or an in-person tour of a different really cool structure or site in central Kentucky, which is another thing too. We're not just Lexington, so we're central Kentucky and the surrounding counties as well. But it's not, I personally feel like preservation is certainly, when I went into it with just like, I love history. Like I'm really interested in like the built environment that I'm in right now. And so, but it wasn't until like I got more into the field itself that I realized that there's a little bit of a stigma to it in regards to like maybe you have to have a degree to really know what. Not at all. Like preservation is very much, it's a part of every community, certainly Lexington's, in terms of like how accessible it is. Like those interests can naturally lead to ways in which you can be involved on like an everyday level. And so our website's a great resource for that too. But yeah, I would say we're really three-pronged in our approach: direct services, education, and advocacy. And we're here for Central Kentucky for whatever interest that there is, like big or small.
Yeah, and we've become much better at being transparent about what we're up to. So if you follow us on social media, Facebook or Instagram, or sign up for our monthly newsletters that Erica is now curating, that will tell you everything you need to know about our ongoing projects and our future intentions.
And we have events, and it's fun. Yeah. It's not just
we're fun, right?
We're fun.
I didn't get a chance to really talk much about the Preservation Center at Hopemont. I'm assuming those are you got updates on those with the newsletter and whatnot, but that would definitely be something I would love to know more about. What is the, I guess, initial launch opening of that? What is that projected to be?
Yeah, so it's a project that I'm very excited about, and it's one of the reasons that it'll be a major part of my role here at the Bluegrass Trust once it does open. We're right now in what actually Zach and I just came from a meeting, like the fun stages of it. So we're really putting together what past case studies of things that the Bluegrass Trust has done, and just preservation in general in Central Kentucky. And the goal of the Preservation Center is really for it to be sort of this like one-stop shop for any preservation needs. Like right now, talking about how like you can go on our website and come to our events, but really we want you to come to Hopemont, which is the Hunt Morgan House here on Gratz Park, which is where we're located, to be able to come in and see these resources in action. Sit down for one-on-one consultation services with Zach, and also see a curated space where we've really highlighted the different ways in which preservation has changed and is developing still and continues to right here in Lexington. So the goal is for it to be opened in 2027, early 2027. So we're in the stages right now of curating the spaces and what it's going to look like. And then as 2026 continues, we're really excited to put it all together. So you have to come to the grand opening, obviously.
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Well, I'm going to leave in the show notes links to your guys' site as well as the newsletter. We'll make sure to blast all that out because I want people to stay connected and see how that progresses. And this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you guys coming on and getting to share about what you're doing here for Lexingtonians and Central Kentucky more broadly. We appreciate your work and look forward to staying in touch and seeing where you guys go from here. And I'll definitely be in attendance at the Preservation Center grand opening. So looking forward to that when it takes place. So it's good times. Yeah, thanks you guys so much for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week and stay warm.